Very good morning. I am going to present the today topic is port numbers. So the learning objective of this port number is the students upon completion of this topic the students will be able to list the port numbers with ranges. The students will be able to explain the role of port numbers in establishing sessions. They are using UDP or TCP. Today we are going to talk about introduction to port numbers, different categories of port numbers with ranges, and the specifically TCP and UDP port numbers, and explain role of port numbers. So the introduction is both the TCP and UDP based services keep track of the various applications that are communicating. To differentiate the segments and datagrams for each application, both TCP and UDP have header files that can uniquely identify this application. So the unique identifier is called port numbers. So in the header of each segment or a datagram you are using UDP or TCP, there is a source and destination port. We have a source and destination port. The source port is the number for this communication associated with the originating application and the local host. The destination port number is the number for this communication associated with the destination application on the remote host. So port numbers are assigned in various ways depending on whether the message is request or response, while server process static port numbers assigned to them. Clients dynamically choose a port number for each conversation. So the source port in a segment or a datagram header of a client request is randomly generated. As long as it does not conflict with other ports in use on the system, the client can choose any port number. So this port number acts like a return address for the requesting application. The transport layer keeps track of this port and the application that initiated the request so that when a response is returned, so it can be forwarded to the correct application. The requesting application port number is used as the destination port number in the response coming back from the server. So the combination of the transport layer port number and the network layer IP address assigned to the host uniquely identifies a particular process running on the specific host device. This combination is called a socket. So identify how a port number is represented and describe the role port numbers play in the TCP and UDP protocols. So the term socket refers only to a unique combination of IP address and port number. A socket pair consists of source and destination IP address. Those IP address are in the 32-bit address with 16-bit UDP or TCP port number. It's also unique and identify this conversation between the two hosts. For example, an HTTP web page request being sent to a web server using the port number is 80. So running on a host with the layer 3 IPv4 address of, for example, 192.168.1.20, would be designated to socket 192.168.1.20 plus port number 80. So if the web server requesting the web page is running on host 120. That is 192.168.100.48 and the dynamic port number assigned to the web server is 49152. This 49,152. The socket for the web page would be 192.168.100.48.49152. So it combined with IP address and port number. So this is port address. We are the example. They are using different application. They are using like email, HTML page, and internet chat. They are using different protocols with the appropriate port numbers. So data for different application is directed to the correct application because each application has a unique port number. This is the main advantages of application. They are using unique port number for each application. And next we are going to discuss about different types of port numbers. So the port numbers are assigned by Internet Assigned Numbers Authority like IANA. It's a standard body that is responsible for assigning various addressing standards. So there are three different types of port numbers. The first one is well-known port number. The port number ranges are 0 to 65,535. For the first category like well-known port number, the ranges for 0 to 1023. The second category is registered port. So the registered port, the ranges of registered port is 1024 to 49151, 49,151. The third type of port is private or dynamic port. The ranges of this type of port is 49,152 to 65,535. So there are three types of port numbers along with the ranges, and among those ranges some port numbers are based on TCP and some port numbers are based on UDP. So registered TCP ports are available, well-known UDP ports are available, well-known TCP ports are available, registered UDP ports are available. So the well-known ports, so well-known TCP ports are example FTP. The ranges of FTP is 21 and Telnet 23, and the registered TCP ports are MSN Messenger. They are using 1863 as a port number, and some proprietary protocol is under the category of registered ports. So well-known port number, registered port number, and dynamic or private port numbers. And so in this presentation, so describe the role of port numbers in establishing TCP sessions and directing segments to server. How the port numbers involved to establish a TCP session. So each application process running on the server is configured to use a port number either by default or manually by a system administrator. An individual server cannot have two services assigned to the same port number within the same transport layer service. A host running a web server application and a server host running a web server application and a file transfer application cannot have both configured to use the same port. So when an active server application is assigned to a specific port, that port is considered to be open on the server. So this means that the application in a transport layer accept and process segments addressed to the port. Any incoming client request addressed to the correct socket is accepted and the data is passed to the server application. So there can be many simultaneous ports open on a server, one for each active server application. So it is a common for a server to provide more than one service, such as a web server and an FTP server at the same time. So in this example, the client running two different applications. One is HTTP request and another one is SMTP request. So two requests sent to the server. So in client side, the source port is 49152 and the corresponding destination port is 80. So HTTP is the port number is 80 and client 2 they send another request, so the SMTP request to the same server. So the server receive two requests from two clients and send the corresponding response to the different clients. So the server responses to TCP clients use random port numbers as the destination port. So in this, client 1 send a request for HTTP request. Their source port number is 49152. They are using this port number and they are send the request. So the destination port number is 80. So the server use 80 as a port number for HTTP. In client 2, the SMTP request will send to server. The source port is 51152 and destination port is 25 because the SMTP port number is 25. So the server will receive the request from client 1 and client 2 and process the request and send the response based on the client source port. So in this, it consider the client source port as a destination port. So in this, source port is 80 in server and destination port is 49152. The corresponding client will receive the response. So HTTP response will be received and client 2 so receive the SMTP response from the server. So these are all the topics are discussed in this class. So